And you're listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you from the Extreme Studios in the Pinos Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. I have from the Great Midwest RDV with me here tonight. We're going to be covering 10 films from 1983, not necessarily the 10 best or the 10 worst or the 10 whatever, but just 10 films that we've curated for your perusal. Significant films that we think are worth discussing, and we're going to have a few runner-ups too. And one reason RDV we've been doing this is because now that we're
Mhm.
at 1,000 subs, we're like, hey, we have a little bit of an audience. Let's get some watch time. Let's get some audience feedback. Let's see what our audience wants to talk about. And nothing's more extreme than talking about awesome movies from the 80s. And we've got a whole bunch of runner-ups here. So why don't you get us set up on some of those before we dive into those 10 awesome movies from the 80s?
As far as you want to talk about this, Charles Bronson, 10 to Midnight.
Hell yeah.
All
As we
right.
said before on 10 to Midnight, when the movie's over, after you shoot the bad guy who's a pedo, I
And
mean,
he's like, yeah, not a chance. He's like, they're going to remember me. Not a
Wrong person,
chance.
not a chance. Bam! God dang it. I mean, Charles Bronson, my goodness, what more can be said about him? And unfortunately, we recorded to let everybody know offline to drop later in the week tribute video for Carl Weathers. And Carl Weathers being a good guy and all that too is just a really fun person. So I don't think we have any movie with him in it this year, but guys, be on the lookout for that.
No,
But yeah, 10
nah, that was
Midnight,
1982 was
yeah. There was nothing wrong with hunting pedophiles and shooting bad guys in the
well,
80s. I just want people to understand that, this was a big deal that, oh my God, a vigilante shooting people. Charles Bronson,
yeah.
thank you, sir.
And I wanted people to know that, hey, if we're going to have Chuck Norris on the list with Clint Eastwood, you cannot have Charles Bronson on here as well. Even if he's at a runner-up, he's still talking about him, and that's all I care about.
Charles Bronson versus Chuck Norris, that's tough. Charles Bronson versus
Dirty Harry,
Clint Eastwood, I think Bronson wins. But that's another conversation for another time. Go
Bronson
ahead, sir.
versus Dirty Harry,
Yeah.
Kersey versus Dirty Harry.
We
Oh,
covered 10 to Midnight. This is a good film worth checking
yes,
out.
yes. Very fun movie.
These are some runner-ups before we get to
All
the
right.
10.
Going into our next runner-up. This is a movie I haven't seen, but Rob seems to say, hey, you should watch it.
Yeah, I've always referenced Bad Boys with Sean Penn in it because it's a movie that you watch, you're like, hey, that's pretty intense. It's got S.A. Morales in it. It's got the one dude whose name escapes me that was in the last season of Dexter that everybody goes crazy about, the guy that talks like this. Clancy Brown. He's in that.
All right,
This is a tough movie as far as
Mr. Krabs.
what it was like. Yeah, it's definitely worth watching, and it's a bit squeamish. Ali Sheedy, you got your stripes in this movie before you would be in the next movie we're going to talk about with you this year.
Oh, that was we mean 1982's year with Ali Sheedy.
Whatever, I'm talking War Games, but this movie is very good.
Oh no, I was thinking of the other one where she's topless.
Yeah, okay.
Our next movie, runner up, is The Outsiders. I saw it as a kid, and I thought this was a really, really good movie. All of the major star actors in here. You had young Tom Cruise. You had Emilio Estevez. You had
Rob Lowe.
Matt Dillon, Patrick Swayze. It's just set in the 50s. You know, a group of kids, gangs, don't like each other. You know, one of them accidentally stabs the guy, so he can't let his best friend, go to jail. So basically, they go into life, pony boy stuff. And like I said, I read the book for this in a literature class, American literature, and
Yep.
It's a fun movie. It's like one of the very few books I had to read for high school that I actually had turned out to be a good movie as well. Not
The
that
80s
many.
have a track record of having some respectable interpretations of stuff from the 50s, and obviously, I will say this. It's the kind of movie that I thought a bunch of pretty boys in here, and certainly nobody intimidating. I know there was that whole style in the 50s that some guys would dress up into, but after you watch Grease for a gazillion times and then this comes out, you're like, yeah, nothing's really scary.
Wasn't it Diane Lane as Cheryl, whoever the girl was?
I do not recall.
I can't remember. I remember. I just remember it was a hot blonde or hot brunette or something.
I just remember. Okay, I saw it. I don't need to see it again.
Yes. Speaking of
Look
movies,
at all that denim, though.
I
Make a
know
mental note of that.
the cutoff denim.
Oh, no Canadian tuxedos, but it's close.
The denim and the tank top. That's my dad through the 70s. He had a navy dark blue.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Another movie I haven't seen, but apparently this was a Disney movie that flopped.
It was. You know why? Because as I ranted before and had it wrong.
They kept rewriting it.
This is somewhat dark. This is a very good film. I kind of wish it was in the 10 films we're going to be talking about, because every time we mention this film about being very
Hmm.
good with the visuals and all that, and being a
Yeah,
very deliberate kind of story for adults with a kids centric sort of story to it, it's just good. It's Ray Bradbury. Disney was looking for adult material, and they got a hold of this. This is
I thought it was
definitely
adult.
worth a watch. I think Jason Robards is in this too. I've not seen this in a very long time. This is constantly on our short list for movies to cover in the 1980s.
See, I thought those our good friend Dalton there with the top hat. All right.
Well, I will not. You know what? We'll authenticate that later.
All right. If you haven't seen this movie, The Man with Two Brains, you're doing yourself a disservice. Steve Martin was just brilliant through the 80s. Whenever, he's another actor, what movie he gets involved in, he just steals the scenes. And honestly, this was fun. And of course, going through all this, just trying to find the perfect body for this brain he fell in love with, to find out she's fat. She likes to eat a lot. She's like, so,
But he
so
doesn't care because he loves her.
but like I said, I love it though, because it's like he went through all this trouble, and that's how it ends. Because it's the only way it could end. You know.
But that's that cynical kind of comedy that he has in it, like The Jerk, where everything goes right for you, but there's still that life lesson in there too, that they do rub it in your face for a little bit
Yeah.
to make
Yeah.
you understand it. And you have to have that. So here you get it. And I think, if I remember correctly, this has the infamous scene where he's all pent up because he's not getting any, and he's going crazy on the pencil sharpener, and then he's trying to like find the best female body to put the brain in. So he lures a prostitute up who
Yeah.
talks with that really high voice, and he was told, I think, by David Warner, no less, about injecting Windex in her ass to knock her out. It's so stupid.
Um.
Steve Martin, yeah, this is good
Yeah.
stuff.
Speaking of stupid, and this we put this on there just to trigger most people that probably don't like this movie. It is Superman 3 with Richard Pryor. I gotta say, despite this, I love the junkyard scene in this.
You're on your own for
Uh,
this one. Go ahead.
oh my gosh, Richard Pryor's character was so dumb in this. He's the guy. He's like, wait, I can just write my own checks, print it out, and cash it. Sure. And then we got the guy from Man from Uncle is the bad guy, I believe, right? I can't remember what his name is.
I don't know, because
Oh,
I
but
can't watch this movie.
you
It's
can't watch. You can't
unwatchable.
watch it.
I cannot.
Oh no.
I
Like
can't.
I said, I like it. The two obviously two evil brothers, sister, team, end up wanting to defeat Superman by leading him to this cave. She ends up getting knocked as a supercomputer, and I always thought that was the most freakiest part of the movie is when she starts turning into a computer, because the computer's wrapping all around her, turning into a cyborg. I was like, that's freaky.
The 80s definitely have a
But
theme of trying to push computers on you. So
we get the sales. I believe I also could see Lana Lang in this too as well, in Edel too. And just seeing Superman with the peanuts going bing into the mirror in the bar. He's got the dark, dark. He basically is wearing the Man of Steel colors. What we saw in with Henry Cavill, the dark, he's got the 5 o'clock shadow, and then you seeing him fighting against Clark Kent in the junkyard scene there, and then you see him throwing in the car crusher, and it's open up, and Clark opens up the key. I just love it. I thought that was a brilliant scene, and despite everything else around the movie is shit, it's still worthy of watching just for that scene alone.
all right.
Yes, but it honestly, it took a chance. It went with a different villain. We had Gene Hackman up until this point in Zod.
Boldly go where no man has gone before. That's a different franchise.
Bernie says this is Iron Man 3 of the franchise. It had its good parts, but overall, it was definitely the weakest of the movies. Yes. Honestly, I disagree. I think 4 is the weakest of the movies. We'll get to that though. All right, this one takes a bite out of your ass. Kujo, literally.
Just say Cujo like a question, and that's all you got to do. You walk into a room. Cujo?
Before the Sandlot, there was Kujo.
Well, the thing with Cujo is we always I'm a sucker for when animals attack. I really am. If it's an evil shark movie or piranha, something you can get out of the water, that's fine. But I like it when animals
Yeah.
attack. I just I don't care. I just Cujo, you watch it and you're like, man, shit, nothing's happening, and you get 1 or 2 attacks and you're like, God damn it, something happened.
It's,
But when it does for that moment, you're like, fuck, that's pretty good.
it's like
And,
Old Yeller, but worse.
we did cover here on the Extreme
Oh
Movie
yes.
Show Man's Best Friend, which is tremendous and fun. This one is like that minus any laughs.
Kujo, man, literally, it is just horrific, but it's also a story of a strong mother rising up. This is definitely a Mother Day. If you're for Mother's Day, you should be watching this movie because she saves her son. I think John Goodman gets killed. I think it was John Goodman. Can't remember who it was in
I
here.
don't recall. It's
It
been
was a
that
guy.
long.
It was either George Kennedy or John Goodman. But I remember the dog basically kills him, and she.
George Kennedy choked on his breath as well, trying to save the lady there. But you bring up an interesting point, even though we're joking about it, about
Yeah,
being a very strong, independent female
yeah,
type lead to it. That alone
yeah.
makes it worth covering.
All right, going into our last runner up for the evening, Christine. Another book I had to read for school, and it was just as good as the movie was. Honestly, this is Dean Stockton's in this. I forgot who the other guy was. I was just talking to Breen about this movie, and it's just a brilliant movie.
Yeah, a lot
Uh,
of people when this came out said, "Hey, why doesn't John Carpenter do more Stephen King stuff?"
yeah,
Because I
yeah,
think it's just a nice marriage. You would think. I like it.
yep,
It makes you feel like you're in high school, kind of like Halloween did. I think that's the Carpenter thing. Still, by definition, some of the best mutton chops I've ever seen in any film, either by the one bully in here, the guy that, switchblades the nerds lunch. Really
yep,
hot, beautiful one in here.
yep,
This is a fun
yep.
film. People don't talk about it, but it's cool.
But this kid, it basically ends up, I want to restore this car, and then we get to hear he's like, "That's my brother's car." He's like, like that car killed my brother. You can have it,
Arnie.
no one should have it. I love it. And yeah, and so Arnie, he's into one of those shops. Remember those back in the day, you could go to a shop, and you can work on your car there.
Yes.
And you just had to pay, whatever parts you want to use. And honestly, it was just awesome how authentic it was as far as that stuff. But just overall, you see as the movie goes on, how the main characters and it's just credit to Eric Breen because we were talking about this last night. Kid almost gets possessed. He
Yeah.
starts getting dark around his eyes.
Yeah. You see him
And
physically transform. He doesn't wear the glasses
no,
as much. Yep.
no, he gets in fights with his mother, which I thought that was legitimately that was his parents were controlling. They're dicks.
Well,
But
here's the thing about that with Stephen King. Yeah, we've mentioned this before with some of the Stephen King films.
yeah,
That especially his early stuff, his short stories are by far the best. I don't think that's debatable necessarily, but they're very strong. Obviously, he writes very long, 1,000+ page novels,
hmm
but he's very good at creating characters, and he's always been fond of making sure everybody's got foibles. And usually, the family's broken in some way, whether they're alcoholics or they beat on you, or the priest is a drinker or pedo
yes,
or whatever it is. And so you see that here. And I thought this movie could have been more interesting if they had made his character deal with that stuff. Because the one thing people today that still amazes me, the young generation, they don't have any interest in driving. They don't have any interest in freedom. They don't have any
nope,
interest in working as early as possible to get their license because it represents going out and finding a woman and making sweet, sweet love to her, on a Friday or Saturday night, right? That means you're
yeah,
an adult. And this movie captures that. I think that part of it's lost, but the part
yeah.
that you and Breen talked about, him getting darker dark to it, is just a very simple way of doing it. It's not, you don't need CGI, and it's very effective. It's a good film.
John Stockwell is plays his friend. Keith Gordon is the main character. John Stockwell is the guy who went on to do a movie called Radioactive Dreams, which we also
Oh, that's
did a
right.
review on this. Yes, with Michael Dudikoff. Very fun, very hard to find indie movie, sci-fi movie. It takes place after like the nuclear war, and these are all the wastelands. And
Yeah,
the music, chef's kiss, bro. I love it. All of it in
yeah.
there. The heart. So anyway, now we're gonna get into our actual top 10, and it starts with Chuck Norris, David Carradine, Lone Wolf McQuaid.
A lot of people will say, "Man, this is a pretty fucking stupid movie. Nothing really happens in it."
No,
And I don't care. This is his magnum opus. But when he basically gets shot up and he's got his custom rig there and he kind of ends up getting all that dirt poured on, what does he do? He cracks open a beer, drinks
yeah,
it, pours over his face, and he comes back to life. And then he goes and beats up David Carradine. All the meanwhile, you've got the crazy woman in it that I forget her name. She's insane in here, and she's tremendous. This, if you got to see one Chuck Norris movie in your life, it's tough, but this is near the top. This just everything clicks to
yeah.
me. This is as Chuck Norris as it gets.
yes,
But
and
everybody calls him Ranger.
there's a scene there. Yes, Ranger. There's a scene in there where he lives by himself when he starts dating the girl, and
Barbara.
Barbara. She cleans up his house,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Where the hell's my beer? It was in the trash." Fucking woman goes back and gets the beer back out, puts it. He's like, "Don't touch my shit."
This is such a great fun film.
April 15th is when that movie came out, 1983.
Okay.
Our next one, we're gonna jump all the way up to May 25th, and this is probably one of the bigger movies on this list. Return of the Jedi. The week is at 3, but still, it's Star Wars. Everybody are gaga for Star Wars. Honestly, I don't get it, but I mean, I do like Harrison Ford. Strong performances in here. I don't care for the little teddy bears. I wish they'd all die in this movie.
Yeah.
The only Wookiee that should be in here should be Chewbacca. I don't want Wookiee family. Pix and I suffered through watching the Star Wars Holiday Special. Too much
Well,
Wookiee.
you know, I've had this weird dream for a long time.
About
Uh,
Wookiees?
well, yeah, actually, it's about movies like Star Wars, where I go, okay, it's neat when when we talked offline and Thursday we're going to drop our Carl Weathers tribute video. I thought there's a nice bit of montages of Carl Weathers out there in his different movies and stuff
Yes.
like that. And it's always nice sometimes when you get somebody who's a decent amateur, kind of knows what
Mhm.
they're doing, or a pro, when they do their own, let's say, music samples or remixes and whatnot. Same thing with video clips. And I thought, wouldn't it be great where you just get this John Carpenter-esque feel vibe or whatever like that. You see
Yep.
Chuck Norris walking around on a farm, and then you hear something. And he's looking around. He's got that little faraway look in his eyes that only Chuck Norris can have. Puts on the his ranger outfit. He's looking around. And all of a sudden, over the hill, you have a bunch of Ewoks and Skywalkers and all these fuckers from Star Wars. And what does he do? He just takes his gun. He starts shooting them all. I want to see an '80s kind of collage of some of these
Your,
things. To sit there and say, "Stomp on that shit we don't like."
your hate for Star Wars showing.
That's not hate. It's just
Hate.
trying to put
Yeah. What is it? What did you
Lone Wolf
say?
McQuaid versus a
Hate,
whole battalion of Ewoks. I want McQuaid to just drive over them. It's going to be
hate
bloody
leads to
mess.
anger, leads to the dark side, or something like that. I can't remember this. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
whatever.
Carrie
All right,
Fisher's
enough of
smoke
that.
show in this movie as well, says Ed Brewer. Marty says, if I had a choice top 10 83 movies, I'd probably swap a Return of the Jedi and replace with something wicked. This way comes.
I absolutely would agree with Martin. I've talked
The
about how
only
much I liked it.
reason I had it in here because Star Wars as a hashtag draws in views.
Well, it's also the biggest movie of the year, so I mean, you have to, we don't
Yes,
have
yeah,
to, but we chose to, and we're going in the order that of the calendar
yeah,
year they're released, not
yeah, yeah.
of significance or anything.
All right. So speaking of that, our next movie, it popped up around June 3rd, and one of my most favorite movies from the 80s. I love this. I've watched it multiple times. It's War Games.
Why is this so good?
I don't know what it is. It's just a kid. It's just on the first of all, he becomes a fugitive. They want him for questioning. He hacked into a government computer by accident. Because remember, as a kid, when computers were still around, you always dreamed about, I want to be a hacker. It'd be kind of cool. Like, what if I got into systems? You always thought about the power at your fingertips, the computer, and all that stuff. Everybody's connected. It's like, what if I did this? And he accidentally gets that program. And the whole thing is like the whole program is hello, Dr. Faulkner. Would you like to play a game? And it just the whole thing, and I just love it. Ali Sheedy is the best girlfriend you could want.
There's an innocence to it, I guess. I don't know how to explain it. This is probably his only non-annoying performance to me, except for Cable Guy. He's tremendous in Cable Guy because it leans into him being that kind of annoying whatever, which Cable Guy's tremendous. But when I think of Matthew Broderick, War Games is number one to me. Cable Guy's number two. There's just something really good about this film.
Do you know what also worries me with this movie when I watched it is the AI controlling everything, Skynet, and all the other stuff, which will be a year later, Terminator. But I mean, I think of it as like everything will be operated by computers.
So James Cameron really been known for ripping people off on ideas too, thinking, hey, nobody reads science fiction and all that too. So, a lot of stuff that's around today, Arthur C. Clarke thought of, Robert Heinlein thought of a lot of it actually, especially from the political side and the humanitarian side. But I tell you, I think for Skynet, I believe it was a gentleman named Harlan Ellison, who's just kind of bitter, angry. Well, he's dead, obviously, but a small guy who wrote very cynical stuff. He wrote that Don Johnson movie. Well, he didn't write the movie, but the story, Boy and His Dog, which is tremendous. It's Steve Martin without the laughs, if you know what I mean. And
Yes.
for some, but again, going back to war games here and the whole idea of it, yeah, nothing's really going to happen, but it really put on stage for everybody the fact that in the 80s, the Cold War was ramping up to a close before it would, turn into something
Yeah.
else. Why? Hashtag communism. And that was a thing in the 80s. You
Well,
cannot
yeah,
get around
definitely.
it.
Iron Eagle, all that stuff. Pro America.
Oh, God, yeah.
Russians are evil. Iraqis are evil. We're all patriots. That was the thing, and But I love the fact that it's like he's like he taught the game how to play tic tac toe, and he's like it's there's no way you can win. So it comes into the end. He's like, how about a game of thermonuclear war? It's like, what the hell? It's like,
Well, the interesting thing about some of that is that, like, tic-tac-toe is what you call, like, a solved game, right? You
yeah,
know that basically in 2 moves, you can either win or draw, assuming, you're trying not to lose or intentionally
mhm,
trying to do it. And it kinda goes back to a lot of old, like, B.F. Skinner type of learning things with chickens and letting them learn how to play tic-tac-toe, but also something like if I bake a cake, it's called the cake problem, and I ask you, "Hey, I cut it, you pick, that's like the best way to figure it out. When you get into 3 variables, it gets really, really complicated.
yeah,
And so computers were used at the time to try to figure out some of these things because a lot of the
yep,
stuff gets reduced down into simple problems and all that too. And, you have all these computers and everything too. I mean, I think there's something on the moon right now with Japan, and it flipped over on its side and all that. A complex system has a lot that could go wrong. War games as a movie and just as introducing computers and all that boring shit nobody cared about to the general audience is just done
yeah,
tremendously. This movie, you could watch it today and go, yeah, people can talk about the dark web, this, that, whatever. Doesn't matter. Too
yeah,
complicated. Don't need it. This
yeah.
is all you needed because
I,
it
I
supports them being on the run. It's a
I
really good
remember
film.
I remember brother-in-law, we were playing the War Games game on PS1 back in the day in the 90s.
Oh yeah.
When it came out, I was like, this is so cool. Like, there's actually a game for the movie. Because like it's 1991. Why would War Games also become a PlayStation game?
What
That
I
was
don't know though is if you went to arcades, which was a big
yeah.
time subculture for a long time, there was a certain chip that was the same computer voice in all of them. I'm thinking
Oh
of
yeah.
um Galaga, Tron, those kinds of things,
Yeah.
Berserk, and I think in war games, I think it's all the same type, and it was a really common one. So every voice, excuse me, that was a computer voice, all sounded the same. The war games is tremendous. It's always on a short list for the 80s.
And it's family friendly too. So
Absolutely, that's another positive too. They don't have to go dark or deep or whatever without you getting a
swearing and all
sense
that
of
stuff.
dread
Yeah.
or concern. No, it's a great film.
Yep. Yep. All right. Going to our number. Well, not really going by numbers, but our next one comes out on June 8th. Not even a week later, and that is well, Trading Places. Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd. Honestly, I thought this was really good. Eddie Murphy showing that what a brilliant actor he is. Dan Aykroyd playing this rich snob, which is actually really good at. And a Wall Street guy, and these two old guys make a bet, basically. Then so basically they hire this homeless guy, Eddie Murphy, and have him take over Dan Aykroyd's spot. Dan Aykroyd ends up becoming living in squalor and getting involved with Jamie Lee Curtis, who plays a hooker. It was just a fun time. There's even the scene on the train with the Halloween party and all that stuff on there. It's honestly it's a lot of laughs, and it has a happy ending at the end.
Yeah, it's a movie that kind of makes me think of stuff that was going on in the 70s or 80s. There was a TV show or something that I remember a teacher with a bunch of rough kids were like that was basically showing them about panhandling, and the guy's like, well, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, if you dress like a bum, and act like a bum, yeah, people might feel sorry for you, give you money, but I tell you what, wear a suit, make it look kind of messy, like it doesn't fit you, have your tie on
Yeah,
it, have it loose, go up to them, and you get more money." And there was all these social experiments going on for quite some time that led to this, improving your self mentality in the 70s to 80s a little bit, especially after the 60s and all that. I would say kind of the more mental side of what that meant in the 70s was a big deal. And I thought that the whole idea of betting over like $1 or whatever, and the whole class subject over here, hey, we could take somebody poor who's African American, basically
yeah,
making your bidding. I thought Dan Aykroyd is crafty enough to kind of like make them seem like slave owners in this film because that's really what it is. Let's be honest.
Yeah, yeah.
And Eddie Murphy, just his charisma, he's on point here. He can do no wrong or whatever. It's a good film. It's one that I've kind of hit my limit on. It's not like one that I'm going to go, hey, let's rewatch it. It's
I've
just
watched
there.
again. I've watched maybe twice in my life, and it's been enough years. It's been at least 20 years for me. I can watch it
Yeah,
again.
it is a good film. It is a good film.
All right, we're going from worst dressed to, well, best dressed. June 10th. I honestly I don't know how these release dates work because like within 2 days and another one these Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays, or Fridays and Sundays, or what. I don't know how it was back in the 80s as far as release days, but usually Fridays now are when their movies come out, or maybe a Wednesday. So I don't know, but anyway, Octopus, one of the most watched reviews on his channel with Pixel and Rob. Honest, and also features the first appearance of Tula, the first trans Bond girl.
Have you seen this?
Yes, I've seen this.
Okay.
Very good music. Honestly, Roger Moore, I think might be his best.
Generally, Roger fans would probably tell you it would be The Spy Who Loved Me, just because it's considered pretty much the best Roger film. I myself a partial Moonraker, but I think For Your Eyes Only is actually his best performance. Yeah, Octopus is interesting because this is the year that two Bond films came out. Of course,
Yes.
somebody had the rights to, I think it was Thunderball, and they redid it as Never Say Never Again, which is an absolutely tremendous song. It really is.
Mhm.
And I like that film a lot. Thunderball is really good too. And the thing about Roger is he's a totally different type of actor than Sean. And so all those movies kind of cater to his strengths, which is what you're supposed to do. So Roger could turn it on and get serious in moments and let you know that he wasn't fucking around,
Yeah, yeah.
despite the quality of the film. But mostly it was all about the setup for the jokes. But it gave you exactly what you wanted. Sean, to me, was pretty much incapable of that. That's not a bad thing. But the other thing, too, I like to mention here, because it's going to be significant in a few weeks as we continue our unstructured, unscheduled James Bond reviews of Professor Pixel, whose job is to watch them all in order with me, is going to be The Living Daylights in 85, I believe. And in this film here with Octopussy, this is when people said, really? Roger's getting old. And you know what? How do you play James Bond when you get older? Okay. So they kind of had been dialing down a little bit the gadgets and all the silliness out of
Mm-hmm.
Moonraker because of Star Wars.
More
They put this
sexuality.
together. And honestly,
Yeah.
let's be honest, it's got a little bit of a Raiders Temple vibe to it. And it's in India, which at the time, if you hadn't seen anything, really makes India look friggin' great. Same thing with Temple of Doom. You get some shots, I think, there too. So it was like, wow, here's a country that's got a fourth of the world's population. Nobody ever talks about it. It's not in movies. And then you look at like, shit, everybody's poor except for this small class. And here's Roger, trying to escape and swinging like Tarzan. I like it. It's fun. It's very lighthearted. If I want a fun
Yeah.
James Bond movie, not too serious, this one's a good one. It's got the Fabergé eggs, which is tremendous.
It's asking who did it better in the Sean or Roger for Bond in the year. I would say Roger Moore for 83, but overall Bond, Sean Connery is just me. He's my Bond. Not because he's the first guy. He just has that really commanding performance where I felt like Roger Moore was more like he's the fuck boy.
He is, right? He's
Yeah,
the playboy. And
yeah,
here's the problem. The
he's a,
problem with Sean in 1983 with this
I think in
Thunderball
a
remake.
balance.
Well,
I'm talking about before.
I think
So
that's what Ed's asking, though.
yeah, and I'd said that I agree with you. It is Roger Moore is the better in '83, but you go back at the peak, with Doctor No and From Russia with Love, the way Connery, his looks, the way he handled, just acted everything as far as handling the danger or charming the women. The guy
I think,
he was James Bond.
I think you wanted to look like Sean Connery, but you wanted to act a little bit like Roger in some situations.
Sure.
Not that Roger was ugly, but the problem I have with that question that Ed's asking, because it's a difficult question, is the fact that when Thunderball came out, Thunderball's tremendous. I love Thunderball. I like it better than Goldfinger. I'm not going to say it's a better
Mm-hmm.
film, but I like it more. It's more interesting to me, I guess. I just like it more. And when he did the Spy Who Loved Me, which I thought was crap with the ninja and all that. Then when of course, there's the break with Honor Majesty's Secret Service. When he comes back and
Yeah.
does Diamonds Forever, to me, Connery's checked out. And there's some interesting Vegas stuff, but really, I'm like, fuck you. You don't care about being Bond. You're in it for the paycheck. But something happened with Thunderball because you know this is fast forward like about 10 years later, and he's doing Thunderball remake, and Sean's fucking owning it here. I'm like, oh my god, I would like to have seen Sean doing it older because before. I wouldn't have thought he would have been able to do like the Roger Moore type stuff, but man, it's tough. Roger to me though was coasting at this point. He didn't really have to work that hard. I think Roger's best, like I said, was For Your Eyes Only. Man, that's a tough one, Ed. It's a really tough one. It's a
Yeah.
really great question. They got you
Money
to hold a gun to my
money
head.
wise, I would say Octopus. Like Octopus was the number one, was high on the list, top 10.
I think they were in theaters at the same time, and to kind of go back to your question about it, usually there was an official release date that might have been a day or two ahead of the weekend.
Yeah,
Typically in a big market, depending whether like it's LA or Chicago or New York, but then the wide release might be a week later, let's say. That's just how they did it then. Not too much different than today, but you sometimes it can be official like at a show or something, and so you might get that official date there if you're looking at the wiki.
alrighty. Well, we're going from Bond women to basically, well, damn, they're married with kids and on vacation. 19 was this. This is July 29th, 1983.
Um,
Wally World.
it's the standard bearer of the family vacation movie.
Yeah.
Nothing comes close.
Yeah.
There's been several of them lately that with different comedians and stuff like that. Marky Mark just had one last year, whatever on Apple TV, I think, or whatever.
Yeah.
Family Plan, and every time you see one of these movies, I go, it's not better than Vacation. It just isn't.
It's not even Vacation. Yeah. Vacation stands out as one of the best. Started off. I still like Christmas Vacation. It just
Who doesn't?
yeah. It just has a little spot in my heart for that. Obviously, it's the one with Grandma.
Yep.
In the Wally World, John Candy, Park Clothes, all this stuff. Chevy Chase was big in the 80s, and this movie just even made him even more popular. Coming off of SNL, going into this, National Lampoons was basically this launching hit after hit, especially with Chevy Chase being at the helm. Rusty and just the whole family, just Clark. I honestly, this was probably the peak for Chevy Chase.
Man, it's tough, but it's definitely up there when he's peaking. I'll say that. As I've gotten older, if this comes on and I just happen to catch some of it, I appreciate more the interplay between the husband and wife. Here was a kid that
Yeah.
really I was like, yeah, that's stupid, that's boring. Looking from a teenager saying, what's unfortunate is when you look underneath Chevy Chase's crotch here in his poster and you see their dog.
Yeah.
I wish that scene wasn't in there, but I get it, and it's
Yeah.
so horrible. I'm like, oh my god, with the I'm like, oh dear lord, it's such a good movie. It really, really is. Why can't anything be as good as this now? Like a family vacation movie.
Because back then comedies were a lot of them were originals, original humor, and now everything's being recycled because they don't know how to create new stuff. Honestly, what's up, The View with the Drew? Just to talk about the movies of 1983. We're about halfway there.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on Vacation?
Vacation is one of those movies. If you've never seen Chevy Chase, or if you've seen, you know who Chevy Chase is, for watching Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah.
I think he's been on there too. Or what was he on? It wasn't Curb. What was he on?
It was. I know what show you're talking about, the half hour one, and he played the older guy, but his timing is second to none. When he's up there, you're like, oh my god, he still's got it. And that's not like it's something that goes away. He's got it.
Yeah, like I said, he had the it factor back then. For Fletch, everything, Funny Farm. Chevy Chase, you need to check out his movies if you haven't done so.
Best line when they're laying in the sleeping bag, and he's getting aroused, and she's talking because I guess the dog's gonna get her or something. He's like, "I'm gonna go for it, honey." He's just Chevy Chase. Yeah, this is peak Chase.
All right, our next movie we're gonna go over to August 5th, and that is one of Tom Cruise's biggest movies. Risky Business. I kind of like this, the whole thing. Basically, son, ends up getting on with basically some hookers and starts making money off of them by being their pimp. We've seen this before with it's a little bit different story as far as what was it, Night Shift?
Yeah.
Yeah. So instead of being in the morgue, no, it's a teenage son. His parents are going on vacation, rents out his house. so they basically can have his friends over and all that stuff, and somehow gets away with it. But
Yeah, because in the '80s, anything was possible if you
oh
put your
yeah,
mind to it. If you want to decide you want to be a pimp,
we
that's
talked
fine.
we talked about how Matthew Broderick, later in he would do Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which is another thing, getting away with it without parents, being situation like this. And honestly, Tom Cruise is iconic scene where he slides in, listen to Bob Seger, like that old time rock and roll. He's in
Yeah.
a shirt. Nicole Kidman didn't reprise it too as well.
I think with this
Yeah,
movie, a couple things we haven't mentioned is it's got a great soundtrack. I think it's
it's
Tangerine
like
Dream.
a contract.
Yeah.
Nice.
Um, one little thing I'll point out is this. I think this is the movie that revitalized Ray Bans, and I know that
Yeah,
Miami Vice hasn't gone on yet at this point. So
no,
that
no,
was another one. If I recall correctly, the minimum wage in the early '80s is approximately, say here in Florida, around 275 to 315. I want to say in '88 or 325. I remember going, these Ray Bans. If you go pricing at the Sunglass Hut or wherever it was at the mall,
yeah,
these are probably like $60 to $70. So you're looking at like what,
jeez,
20, 30 times minimum wage. So today, if it's $10, you'd be looking at $200, $300 for a pair of sunglasses. And you're like,
yeah.
that sounds about right, doesn't it?
To me, I was like the people who wear the sunglasses like this were the douche, the nerds.
Because it really, the Lacoste shirt or the polo,
Yeah,
very significant in terms of if you wore this, you didn't have the money as a kid, your parents did, and so that's one reason why in the '80s
yeah,
people kind of looked down on you if you flaunted it. It's one of those movies that I thought for Risky Business, I go, who really can identify with this character? Because most people watch this movie aren't rich like that.
no,
That the piece of glass or whatever breaks, and so they have to fix it or repair it and buy it. And that's why he runs it. That's the excuse for the whorehouse. He's getting us all these call girls are just coming to his house, and I get things are different now, but it's like you wouldn't even think about doing that today just because of
no,
social
no.
media and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
To me, Cruise had not became Tom Cruise yet at this point here.
Also, comparing it also to the Ferris Bueller's Day Off, his father's car goes into the lake, and
Yep,
he had to tow it out. Same thing.
yep.
It's like if you can see Ferris Bueller's Day Off, kind of took an inspiration from this.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the soundtrack makes it a lot better the way they kind of make it a little kind of trancy and electronic. Because if it wasn't, I don't think this would be that good. It's this very solid film. It really, really is. It's
Yeah,
interesting about dealing with what you're going to do trying to become an adult and all the nervousness you can have about it,
well,
how anxious it can make you feel, no matter how rich you are.
yeah. And when it comes to early '80s, I think of Risky Business. I think of these movies like this, where later '80s is all the action movies.
But hey, let's be honest too. He puts it on her. I mean, and he does. I give him a good. He does it to her in a way that as a teenager you would really do it to it and all that.
Yeah.
Love on the Train and all that kind of stuff there too.
Yep.
So I'm glad it just wasn't a hey, let's take our clothes off, show them dropping on the floor, and then segue to watching the TV and then cut scene.
No,
None of
no.
that.
He was hungry like a wolf in
They
this.
show you what you're gonna get. Yeah. So there you go.
And then one of these days, or we're gonna have to go over the music that came out in the '80s.
Oh
There's
God,
so
yeah.
many bangers that came out. Especially, I was looking this year. I was like, when I was on Twitter advertising, I was like, what can I put this to? It's like, Your Love Is Driving Me Crazy by Sammy Hagar. And I was like, no, we're going Duran Duran, Hungry Like the Wolf. That's more iconic. That's more than this year. I imagine that played everywhere.
Love Machine by Wasp.
Yeah, yeah. So many songs came out in 1983. All right. Our next movie, all right, is it's one of Rob's favorites, and Rob actually got me to see this movie because I'd never heard of it. This came out on September 16th. It is Revenge of the Ninja.
The best ninja movie of all time, even though it's a sequel, because Enter the Ninja with Franco Nero is the second best ninja movie, and we like the Ninja 3, even though, with the girl in it and the whole occult kind of nonsense with it too. I don't know why this movie hasn't lost a step. We watched it, reviewed it here, and it's just insane. It has still to this day, and I'm not joking. To kind of get serious for a moment about Carl Weathers, mentioning him again.
Yep.
You forget that scene where was it his arm gets ripped off and his arm's still on the trigger, blowing at the gun and all that, and
Yeah.
he's just sitting there squirting. This still has the best blood squirting of any movie I've ever seen when they're fighting on top of the roof. If you want to see a ninja movie, stop with this one. You can't go wrong. Yes, we talked about James Bond with ninja stuff like that, and nobody really cared. I think, United States, obviously Bruce Lee was a big deal, but Ninja, thank you, Canon Films, late 70s, Kung Fu, all that stuff, because the world was not ready
Yep.
for what Revenge of the Ninja was getting ready to show you at this time here. This is to me one of these short films of the 1980s that just explains everything about the way they dress, the way they talk. Um, Ken Kosugi, his son, the little boy in here, he does a lot of
Yeah.
fights now today as far as
Yep.
choreography and stuff like that. This is just good shit. I mean, you can't get enough of this one. This is an all timer.
And the more we would do these, we're on our fourth year. You know, we started in 1980, 81, 2, 3. Actually, no, yeah, we're on 83 now. Holy crap! I just want these movies posters. Where are the cool movie posters like this today? There isn't. Like you said, now the creativity has kind of gone out the window
Well, it used to be a
for big
collection thing
corporates.
to it. I
Yeah,
don't I don't know why it has gone away. Um,
yeah.
I don't.
I don't.
It was a thing too, especially with VHS. I don't get it. The posters are more enticing, definitely. Yeah, I
And
haven't really thought about it that much, but you're right.
like I said, late 80s was the big time for movies, the music, the posters, the creativity, all this stuff. It just all was perfection. Everybody wanted to have fun, and these movies were just so awesome. Sometimes, yeah, sometimes they took or ideas from the 50s and the 60s or 30, even 30s, and they modernized them and they made them just much more entertaining. Now, when people modernize stuff in the 80s, you can't do that because you're taking away what was already perfected to perfection and trying to redo it again.
I think a lot of it is not really
It's
understanding the source material or being faithful to it. If
no,
you're humble about it and do it, that's one thing, even if you screw up. But I think a lot of people are arrogant about it and go, "Well, I'm just going to give this my touch because it deserves it." No, that's the wrong
and
approach.
that's the thing. They do the self inserts.
Yeah, exactly. They're popping themselves, marking out for themselves on the stuff. Revenge of the
Yeah,
Ninja. One of the things about it too is that, like, if I can nerd out for a moment, a buddy of mine worked in a print shop, and I would work in the print shop like a year or two later,
Mhm.
and he had to come up with this idea. Man, we got to make a T-shirt. That was like their final project, right? So everybody wore denim and T-shirts in the '80s, right? Unless you were like risky business and had money, and
Yeah,
nobody really did. It was very few people did, at least in the hood where I grew up. So I told him, I said, "Hey man, make a ninja shirt." He's like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Look, got the Chuck Norris magazine or whatever, and it had, I think, this picture in it here where he's got everything."
yeah,
So he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Let me borrow that." So he took the print out of here, transposed it, put it on top of a T-shirt, and he made like a couple copies of it. Got his A plus, gave me one of these shirts. I'm like, "This is badass," because one of the things about denim that people don't bring up and you don't
you,
see in movies a lot is that there was a phase in the early '80s called friendship pins, where girls would put pins on them, give them to you if you like them, you put them on there.
yeah,
Then when people started going to concerts, it was just having the button from each of the concerts you went to. Then there was the back patch, like if you're a White Snake or Ozzy or
yeah,
Iron
yeah,
Maiden or any of those. But then a lot of people started doing movie ones too, and it was like really cool that like
yeah.
everybody's like a
All the
poster walk around wearing their denim. This is ninja stuff was super popular. Again,
yeah.
thank you, Canon
It's
Films.
kind of like having your Letterman jacket in school with all the different awards. Places up patches. But yeah, but that, like I said, it was a badge of honor. You went like all these different concerts. You got the button for each concert you went to. You were popular. The more buttons you had, or hated. But like I said, so I got my question is now, do you still have that T-shirt?
No. It was cheap shit material. You can sort of hear
Oh,
with the sweat and everything like that. No, I think it
oh,
lasted
that would have
maybe
been
a
great
year.
to see a poster or a picture of that. If you would have had it, back in the day wearing it. Awesome.
It's Canon took marginal scripts, as they like to sit there and say,
Yeah,
with just an idea, a very low budget, but they would put a sincere effort into trying to make them be action packed and give the audience what they wanted, and they didn't deviate. They did not try to be cute with stuff. We've covered a lot of stuff. We always call them Canon classics because they're a hell of a lot of fun, and they're like the movies you'd want to go see at midnight to have fun. We don't have that today, where you go, "Oh, such and such is coming
yeah,
out with
yeah,
it." Some people might say A24, but it's not marketed as such, and it's not like action films or whatever. It's stupid ass shit that's really bad. God, this is so
yeah.
good.
Yeah. So our last two movies both came out on the same day, December 9th. So
A very special day in the Extreme household, as it's my
yes.
birthday.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah,
So
yes, sir, and Donny
uh,
Osmond's, and I think Kurt Angle's.
damn true.
The 3 eyes.
It's true. It's damn true. So these two
Chris
movies
said Kurt. No,
are
I'm sorry, go
swappable.
ahead.
These two movies are interchangeable. As far as we're gonna talk about, but I chose this one as the next one. We're gonna go to Scarface. And I know some people are like, "Oh, it's just over. It was just overacting, just too much gore, too much thing." This is a rags the riches to basically to death story. This is Icarus he flew too high to the sun and then died because of his stupid mistakes. Basically, he was drunk. Um, in this one, same thing. If you're gonna guy basically right, he rises up to the ranks of the cartel, drug cartel, starts sampling his own product, and then starts making it just spiraling everything out of control. Michelle Pfeiffer's hot in this too. Push it to the limit. The song from this. I'm curious to see how far that went in the charts because that is such a banger hit when I hear it. Especially when you're playing Vice City, Grand Theft Auto, and you hear "Push It to the Limit" comes on, you're driving your sports car. You go, I just run people over. It's a fun movie. Um, yeah, and Ed Burr saying Al's not Cuban. Yeah, and he's saying that Mark is though. But no, Al Pacino though. Like I said, this was a really cool thing. Literally most movies will glamorize a character or a villain, and this doesn't glamorize it. This is a story about a guy who was disgusting from the very beginning, and was a refugee or I guess it's illegal coming in from supposed to be coming from Cuba or somewhere around there, and coming in through Florida, which was happened back in the day. It still happens, not as
Oh yeah.
much, but um, they decide to basically get work for this mobster guy. They go to his house, and the guy's gonna basically was gonna kill him. So instead, he uses the chainsaw and pushes it back on it and kills him. He's like, "You don't fuck with me, I'll fuck with you." And it's like basically the whole thing. He decides to work his way up, saying, "Hey, I can do this better than this guy. You know, I'll even get you make more money. Won't you like that?" And they give him a chance, and he starts making out as far as well on his deal, but his promise. And he gets more ruthless the more power he gets,
Yeah.
and it's just like he then gets greedy, gets paranoid. You always think because the way he went up in the ranks so fast, I would be paranoid too because what you did, someone and no one else could do, and it gets and that's the way it goes. He's not loyal to anybody, and it comes to bite him in the butt, bite him in the butt because the one guy he replaced said, "You need to be loyal. You're not loyal to anybody but yourself. It's gonna be your downfall," and it was his downfall. Of course, when people think of this movie, the first thing pops in your mind is at the end where he's basically the shootout scene. He's got the huge gun and he's got the pile of coke on his desk. But it's more to that though. Like I said, this movie does not glamorize his lifestyle. If anything, it just shows you criminals are disgusting people and they need help as far as mental help. They need to be sometimes these people are just pure evil. Like Scarface. He wasn't he was evil. And honestly, when I learned about this, is actually was loosely based off a 1930s film that was kind of banned because the whole thing, the gangster going up and just murdering people. The 80s, the reason it worked because cocaine was a big thing. The whole drug trade, the whole drug war going on. That's why you'll see years later when Miami Vice comes out in 1984, like the next following year, 1983, and go on through 86. It's all about people trying to smuggle cocaine in and the drug trafficking, prostitution.
Yep.
So this movie just fit well. Now, I guess Brian Palero, I think his name is
De Palma.
De Palma, did another movie like this too, which was called Wolf of Wall Street. And
Well, De Palma films are very sexy, very glamorous.
yeah. So like
Really
I said,
no, I agree with you about the glamorizing. It's
yeah,
glamorous film, but it's not glamorizing the subject matter. I think
no,
it's
no,
putting on full
no,
display. It often reminds me of, I think it's the 40-year-old virgin, where right when they're finding out about the boobies feel like sandbags or whatever conversation around their poker table that he's a virgin. The one guy makes a comment. I think it's Seth Rogen. It's something like, "Yeah, it's like the time I went down to Tijuana and I said, yeah, I got to see a donkey showing a girl, and then I went, and then it was really a donkey and a girl, and it's like you're like, oh, that's kind of disgusting, right?"
yep,
And I think kind of that is on display here, and without really saying the guy's evil or not, I just think it's just the human nature stuff. When you get to be so powerful or you get a lot of success quickly, nobody tells you how to handle it, how to prepare for it. Why? Because most
Oh,
people aren't so wildly successful, and it usually does take a little bit of a certain mindset or frame of mind that's not congruent with having fully functional adult level relationships that people might consider healthy, to get an extreme level of success. I mean, obviously not without inheriting or whatever. So in the 80s, you got a lot of exploration into the idea, like in risky business, of, well, gosh, how do I deal with this? If I don't get into the school of my choice, my future's going to suck and all that. You know what? You're really overdoing it, even by 80 standards, because to now, of course, it's so devalued, nobody gives a shit. But for them, that was real. And what I liked a lot about Scarface too, especially as a kid, you think of all this being like kind of Wild West, but when you're an adult and you see some of the other
hmm
stuff going on with it too, you go, well, and you and I had even argued this in our review with Scarface, is that, well, she chose to be with him, so she's broke too. So actually, they're a good match, right? Crazy,
yeah,
crazy knows crazy, right? And I think he wasn't supposed to be redeeming at all. And I think the slow descent
no,
into madness into his end is appropriate, and it's worth watching. And I think the only flaw you could really say is that this is one of those types of movies where you don't necessarily like the guy, but you admire his nature about it, and there is something to go. I know that might not be the right way to handle things, but I appreciate the drive and wish I had some of that me in it, because I tell you, kind of fast forwarding to today, this is obviously Vice City, the third one, which people I think still thinks the best game. They're revisiting, I think, Vice City. If we saw the trailer, which
yeah,
I
yeah.
know you and I disagreed on what it looked like, but
It,
it just because
it looks
this
like
culture
pandering.
is all here. Well, and again, you don't know that that's real game footage. It's just a teaser of something that we'll probably never
Yes,
see, just like how movies are today. But Scarface really culturally hit hard. It came back in the hip hop community, and the T-shirt itself of with the picture you put up was real famous. This is a movie that started off with people not necessarily liking a lot of the critics, but it was one of those movies you just can't say no to
yeah.
when it comes to culture and people.
And
It's that huge.
when people say, "Oh, this is a disgusting film, you should never watch it," honestly, you should at least watch it
Not
once.
disgusting. Get out of here.
No,
Come
I've seen
on.
worse.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, like I said, you should, I mean, especially with all the horror films, you think this is bad? I don't know. Horror films are a lot just gross with eyeballs and all like weird stuff. Yeah, this, like I said,
Suck it up, Buttercup. Watch a little Scarface, for God's
this is
sakes.
a movie that they should show in schools. Not No, honestly, they should show in the school and let them know this is what happens when you get involved with crime. Crime does not pay.
That's what Scared Straight the was for.
Yeah, yeah, I know, but I mean, like, literally, and they should talk about this. Should talk about how being a criminal is not a glorious life.
All
You
right,
know,
our final film for the 80s that we wanted to talk about,
yes,
1983. What is it?
our final film is, well, it's a sudden impact. Dirty Harry is at it again, but this time he's after a woman that's going around killing people. Her sister was killed basically raped and then killed. Now she's out for
Under the
revenge.
boardwalk.
Yes, under the boardwalk.
She's not having
Dirty
fun.
Harry is basically put on leave and sent over to San Francisco. No, San Francisco. Where did he go? Usually was in San Francisco and they moved him somewhere else. I forget what it was, but he basically got put on boardwalk duty. I think that's what it was. Still in Sim City, but we also get the first appearance of the automatic Magnum.
This is
uh,
the sugar scene in the beginning, I think, where he
I,
goes to get his coffee, and she's just pouring a ton of sugar, and he walks out.
yes, the sugar, yes.
Oh, this is so good. This is so good.
And
Yeah.
like the guys around the bank, he's like, like with sugar, he kept pouring it, kept pouring it, kept pouring it. He's like, keep pouring it, I just love it, the whole scene. And of course, because Callahan is a loose cannon, they hate that he wants to do his job, and he never leaves the criminals alive. He just blows them away with a gun. I just love it. It's like the guy's he's like a 44 Magnum. They can take down an elephant. Imagine what it'll do to you. It's like it's Clint Eastwood. You said we talked about Charles Bronson before. We talked about Chuck Norris. Clint Eastwood, the trifecta right here.
What do you all have in common? Vigilantes.
Yes, I know.
And it's so great because when I saw Clint Eastwood as a kid, he was already old to me, right? So I didn't really
Yes,
see a lot
yeah.
of the younger stuff. This is the first a Dirty Harry movie that I saw, so I didn't realize this had went back already like 10 to 15 years. And of course, we've
Yep.
covered all those Dirty Harry movies here on the Extreme Movie Show. Check those out in order. We talked about how he's still technically a ward of the state or whatever, which is kind of interesting too, how militant he is. But just as a kid watching him go, well, we're just not going to let you walk out of here. And the guy's like, who's we, sucker? Because people said sucker a lot in the 80s. And the way he's just moving, I never saw it as a kid. He goes, well, me and Smith and Wesson, bam, 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 bam. You're like, damn, this is awesome. I mean, is there really a better opening to a movie? And look, we don't want to glamorize when we do rest in peace videos. We don't always do it for everybody. Clint Eastwood's in his 90s. He's still active. We still cover his films.
Don't
We just
say
like
that.
Clint
He's gonna
Eastwood.
live for another 20 years. Screw you. He's
One
Clint
can
Eastwood.
hope. But here's the thing. When he
He's too stubborn to
goes,
die.
I'm telling you, this opening scene is what people are going to refer to a lot, for better, for worse. It's that iconic with it. Even though it's probably not the strongest of these films, it's still very good.
You know what they're gonna say? They're gonna go to the empty chair. That's what they're gonna go to. In the rally, they're gonna go to the empty chair thing. His speech that, and there's Clint Eastwood with the empty chair. That's what they're gonna do because people are assholes. But honestly, Clint Eastwood, his character here, Dirty Harry, one of the best cops movies you can watch. And I wish more cops really like Dirty Harry.
Clint Eastwood, Charles Bronson, Chuck Norris. I mean, Jesus. I mean,
Right.
how that's an embarrassment of riches the 80s had. And these now, Chuck Norris was the young pup out of these guys. Ah, man. Clint Eastwood's character being illustrating the even going back into the early 70s, how the judicial system has become. And of course, it's the state of California. That stuff spreads across the United States. People don't want to get too much. I think that's why a lot of people were butthurt about it because, if they just want you to just think, oh, it's just a stupid movie. Don't take it seriously when you see stuff going on. And I'm like, it's so good. Cowboy, I think he still was trying to be a cop because I still think he grew up with his ideas. Those old school cops usually like the last in line at that time that I think still had that idea behind them too. I think today's cops are really the most militant or the least cop-ish of what that used to be. I don't think being a cop today means the same as it did back when Dirty Harry's characters we met. I think it's totally different.
Sure, there was probably dirty cops back then, but then you get that there was cops like this who were sick of watching going through all the red tape, bureaucratic bullshit. And he's like we're not gonna let criminals go, and that's what Dirty Harry was.
Yeah.
At the end of the first one, he killed the guy.
Yeah. Man, oh man.
And he's like, here's my badge. Basically, I'm gonna F you to you because what you gonna do? I don't. They bring him back on because why? Because crime went up without Dirty Harry.
That's right. That's right.
It's like I said, put cops like Dirty Harry into Chicago. Chicago, you'll be able to do sit in a park and have all your valuables out and you'll be fine. Literally, it comes down because the fact there's no law enforcement in Chicago and some of these other democratic states. Sorry, statistics prove it. Doesn't matter who's the criminal, what they look like, race or gender or whatever. Crime left unchecked increases and it gets worse. So, all right, like I said, Dirty Harry, Sudden Impact, probably not my favorite of all the movies. I know I better than Deadpool. I did like Magnum Force with the mailbox bomb, but that'll be coming up later in the years.
Yeah.
Trying to remember what the second was called. I can't remember what it. Anyway, so that's it for this week.
Films. Yeah, go ahead.
That's gonna be it for this week, though. Or actually, this year, 1980. We have no other movies. That's it. Hope you guys had fun.
Yeah, just as a quick note for everybody, next Sunday is the Super Bowl. We may end up pre-recording 1984 before that too, so it might be a bit of a different thing before we're back on to 1985 the week after. Tuesday night, we're going to have our Thunderdome matchup, and you guys know the routine. 2 movies enter, 1 leaves. So we try to pick one of the biggest films of the year, try to find an inadequate counterpuncher to see what it can go up and try to do it, try to really engage you guys in discussion to it as we revisit the 80s too. Anything else you need to plug there, RDV?
Not much. That's it for the night for this channel. Tuesday night with the next Thunderdome, 1984. I'm thinking Ghostbusters. I don't know what you're thinking, but
I will look for something to stomp Ghostbusters, and it will not be the second Conan film. All right, guys, thanks for watching, listening. Have a good night. As always, stay extreme. Good night now.
later, guys.